Welcome to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl, and Joy and I are two very old friends who are going to talk about murder and everything else.
Welcome back, everyone. So, on Friday, my nephew moved out. On Saturday, my oldest kid moved out. So, we're back to like a very tiny nest now. We're not exactly empty nesters because we have one more kid that hasn't flown the coop. But I have to tell you that Friday I came home from work and no one was home, and I had a freezer full of ice cream, and I sat in my underwear on the couch. I watched the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, and I ate 2 ice creams for dinner in my underwear. It was glorious.
That's the great thing about being a grown up. I had popcorn for dinner the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Not in my underwear. I was wearing underwear, but not only underwear.
No, it was so nice.
Hey,
And the house was spotless because Maria had been here. So it was just so nice.
oh my God. Can Maria come over here?
Yeah, right.
So I have a question for you. So
Okay.
I did not watch any of the Olympics, including the opening ceremony, but I heard that there was a very controversial opening ceremony. Would you like to talk about it?
It was very artistic. It was very, very artistic. And they had like heads of famous uh, French people in the Seine made up like these huge billboard size heads. And then they had done a walkthrough, I guess, of Paris, and they discovered that they had the busts or statues of over 200 men, but they only had like 40 women. So they erected statues and busts of other famous women around the city of Paris so that there was more of like a female presence, instead of just like Marie Antoinette and like what was her name, Edith Piaf and people like that. So I
Hmm.
really appreciated that they beefed up, women's, famous French women, and then they had so many amazing performances. Like they had, I mean, gave me goosebumps. But they also did. It wasn't just like super classy. They had like these French can girls doing these like dances, with the ruffles and the skirts up so you can see their pantaloons. So maybe some people didn't like that. They also had a scene of the Last Supper with
Now
drag queens.
that's the
And so
part I guess was controversial.
I guess they garnered a lot of, but you know what? I mean, first of all, the Last Supper was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, famous Italian. Secondly, um, point me in the direction of a famous painter who hasn't been controversial or problematic, like in, we've talked about Camille Claudel. And and then the other thing is, um, get over it. It's freaking art. I
I,
don't care if the Last Supper was depicted. They've done it with dogs, Cheryl. So if you can have dogs at a table pretending they're at the Last Supper and not freak out about it, then let it go already.
okay, then I'll have to check it out, but I bet you anything it doesn't beat the Beijing opening ceremony. That opening ceremony was the best thing I've seen as far as
Yeah,
opening
it was a
ceremonies
pretty
go.
cool opening ceremony, but they also had this really cool dude who was like running with the torch across the like
At the
rooftops of
top
like
of the stadium.
yeah,
Yeah.
and all of the like arrondissement buildings in France, in Paris, which is so cool
Oh,
because
they
these
did.
old,
Oh,
old,
okay.
old buildings, and he's jumping from rooftop to rooftop, and
Oh,
I
that's
just thought
cool.
like how amazing. First of all, it's like he's got to be an amazing athlete, and he was wearing like a mask so you couldn't see. Well, his face was shrouded, so you couldn't see who it was. And then, of course,
Yep.
when he got to the end and they unmasked him, I literally had gone to the bathroom.
But right there where you're sitting. Um, so
No, but I didn't get to see who he was. I was really disappointed. or
Well,
she.
was it CGI?
Yeah.
Was it CGI that he
I
or
don't
she
think
was jumping from
so.
the?
I don't
It
think
was real.
so. It was
Joy, oh my
pretty
God.
real to me.
Okay, I have to watch it. But what I was talking about running around along the top of the stadium or whatever in the air, something, it was the Beijing one. That one was so cool. But that
Yeah. You know who performed Celine Dion? She
at this
performed,
one?
yeah, in French. So
Oh,
you have to watch it because you
I'll
talk
watch
about
it
her
just for that.
documentary and how it made you weep. And like, I just, I think it'll be like so touching to you. You know, I believe Celine Dion is not French. She speaks French, but I believe she's Canadian. So, you know, hey, Canada is like, our immigrated French friends to the north.
Yeah, I'll have to check
Anyway,
it
I
out.
think you'll love it.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I have an update. Several weeks ago, I talked about my credit cards being stolen. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And guess what
And
I
how
got
you
in the
saved
mail?
money.
Yeah,
Saved
and
money.
guess what I got in the mail yesterday?
Two
I
more
got
credit
a
cards.
Yeah, I got a letter from Ticketmaster informing me that they had had a data breach, and so both of my credit card numbers have been compromised. So,
The old
it
credit
also
cards or the new credit cards?
the old ones. So it said I needed to take action. So I'd like to thank Ticketmaster, but it turns out I'd already discovered that and had taken action. The letter would have been helpful a month ago
Right,
before my credit cards were stolen. Am I
right,
right?
right. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, like I always enjoy saying, better late than pregnant. So, do you have any updates, Cheryl?
You know what? I have an update on Chris Watts, your favorite guy.
Oh,
You may have heard this, but I think it just came out like I don't know. I think it just came out, but he apparently, like they prisoners become friends, right, with their neighbor cellmates because you don't have anybody to talk to. So they start
right.
confiding, right, in the person that's in the cell next to you. So I guess he was going to write a book with the guy that was next to him, and then he decided he didn't want to do it. And this guy is coming out with all this information. And one of the pieces of information is that Chris was writing like journaling or whatever. And he says in his journal that his mistress gave him an ultimatum, like she told him, it's either your family or me. Now, I don't think she meant you got to off them or you know what
Right.
I mean? She may not have, because there's so much controversy about her knowing that he was going to do that, or her being in on, or or influencing him.
Mhm.
Well, she might have influenced him because I think he just, so he calls her a Jezebel, and he's like has all this flowery poetic way of talking about her, but basically like she was this like this like this almost mystical figure that like took over his mind and his soul, and she just and I believe that. I think that he, well, he was heavy, and then he lost weight, and he became attractive, and this girl, although his wife was attractive, so I don't get it, but it seemed like he lost his mind over this attractive woman that was interested in him. And anyway, so he says, because the thing that I watched, I forgot. I can't even give him a shout out because I don't remember which channel it was. Plus, I read up on it today. Um, he they showed a little bit of her interrogation, the mistress, and she's the guy, the detective or whoever he was that's is questioning her. He said, "You never told him like, it's him or it's me or the kids," or and she's like, "No, no, 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 blah 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 blah." And so now he's saying in prison, he's writing in his journal that she told him it's me or your
Oh,
family, and
wow.
that was the night before he killed them.
Oh,
Again, I'm not saying she told him you gotta murder them, but she probably was like, it's me or them, like you gotta make a choice, not you gotta kill them. But yeah, that's
well,
interesting.
news for her. This guy, this is what's called a pattern. if he had chosen her, he would
Oh
have done the
yeah,
same thing to her down the line. It's like
yeah.
I find it so interesting, and I do.
He did
I
choose
mean,
her though, in a
right,
sense.
right.
Killed
But it would
poor
have
him.
but it would have been bad news for her. Bad news bears down the line, you know?
If he had, you mean if he had gotten away with it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, come on. It's it's like it's called a pattern.
It's just interesting though because he didn't say that for a while because I'm pretty sure he was protecting her, or maybe he didn't see it. Maybe he, whatever. He can't blame her, But he's saying that now. I think he just lost
Right.
his mind. I think he just lost his freaking mind.
I don't know,
That's the
man.
power of the vagina.
Is that what it
That
is?
is. Yeah. I was gonna say
Oh
the
my
P word, but
Lanta.
it just feel too. I feel too
Power of the
much to
pussy. I
say.
love it. Ooh,
It,
that
no,
sounds even better.
yeah, it is because some of the things I read, like, their sex was really like what, like he had never, like I said, Shannon, whatever. She was very attractive, but it's just always something what's different and what you can't have and blah, 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 right? I guess. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's
You
just really
can't always get what you want. All right, guys? If you're listening to this, the Rolling Stones are really on to something.
they
Unless you're Mick
are.
Jagger, who had a baby at 82. All right? He apparently can get whatever he wants. And he's still getting it.
Oh
So
my
there.
God.
I saw a video clip of him in concert, like seriously, like 2 weeks ago. I gotta tell you, 82. Here's the news flash. Hard life of rock and roll and womanizing. Ooh boy, he is still doing that crazy chicken dance across the stage, getting his stuff. And 82 is getting up there. So you rock on, Mick Jagger, with your bad self.
How does he look? Because he always looked
He,
weathered, even when he was young.
well, he looks the same. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm gonna find that video clip and send it to you.
Yeah, okay, yeah, please do. So I watched
Yes.
Bohemian Rhapsody for the second or third time, the movie, and then I started looking up. Excuse me, I started looking up old videos of Freddie Mercury and just looking up the information on the band and all that stuff. It was really
You
fun.
were like 30 when he died, right? Sorry.
No, it's true. He died
Because you're a lot older than me.
I am older than you, and I was.
I said a lot. I said a lot.
Oh, well, he died in like what? I just watched the documentary and I don't even remember. 85
was
or
it
something?
like 84 or 83? I don't know.
I think it was 85.
I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
know about
Good thing
Queen when he died. I didn't discover Queen till later. He had an
I
amazing set of pipes,
I
though.
saw we saw him. I didn't get to see him, but we saw it with Adam Lambert. And I don't care what anybody says. He's not trying to replace him. That's the thing. And it's very clear. He's not trying to sing like Freddie. He's singing his own way, and it's more of an homage, and it was great. We enjoyed it so much. And
Ooh.
it was great because you were happy for the other band members, who now have a chance to go out and enter and perform some more because they
Oh,
now
yeah,
have a singer again, so
totally.
yeah, so anywho,
Well, rolling on to shout outs, I have a shout out to our listeners. Thank you guys for all of the listens. And just a reminder that you can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, audible.com, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Cheryl, you got any shout outs?
I have a shout out to the baby scorpion that I found on Callie's stroller. I have a shout out because it just solidified. He or she. I wonder how you could tell whether it's a male or female scorpion. I wasn't about to try.
Very, very tiny penis.
But I heard that the baby ones are more dangerous, just like any other, like a snake or
Mhm.
whatever. They don't know their strength or whatever. But he didn't live to test that theory, he or she. But yeah, it's just one more thing on the list of things that make me want to leave here. First of all, when you get in your car, it's about 140 degrees in there. It's amazing. You probably cook a pizza in your car that's been sitting in the sun while you're at work. And then you
Whoa.
get to bring home scorpions or have them crawling in your place or whatever. And then listen, I am not ashamed. We are not ashamed on this podcast. Joy and I are not embarrassed to call out our own misquotes, um, mispronunciations. That's for damn sure. With Reuters, I'm still thinking about Reuters and Reuters. I'm like, God, I wonder how many people out there are face bombing listening to this. Um, but so I'm texting my sister who lives in Hawaii, and I'm talking about this scorpion, and she's like, "Ew, blah blah blah." I knew there were centipedes, but she, in our conversation, tells me that they have scorpions there, and I'm like,
Mm.
"What?" And she said, "Yeah, we have. We don't." She goes, I don't know if she's ever seen one or she rarely sees them. She goes, yeah, it's a tropical island. We have scorpions and centipedes. We just don't have snakes, thank God. But
So
I
it's
think
not the tropical paradise you thought it was.
exactly because we know they have flying roaches. Um, we,
Great.
we call them
Count me out. I think I'll stay here.
we call them 747s because they're so big, the roaches. And now I find out they have scorpions, and I already knew about the
Great.
centipede.
And
Um,
they also have tsunamis, which you can't get away from.
Yeah, but my family's there. But this is what's
Well,
interesting is
you
I'm
once
not
moved
stupid.
up on a
All you
hill.
all you people that think I'm super stupid, I left when I was very young. I left
No one's
Hawaii when I was very
stupid.
young,
Jesus,
and
Cheryl. No one
I've
thinks you're
lived,
stupid.
I lived most of my life in California. So I did not ever have any interaction or nor heard anything about scorpions when I was young, and I left as a teenager. So I was floored that
The
Hawaii
only
has
thing
scorpions.
the only thing I know about the Scorpions is they are a sick 80s hair band. It's a rhythm of love. Got me coming on and on. Anyway, that's all I know about the Scorpions.
I wish that was the only scorpion I was exposed to. Anyway,
Well,
thank you, scorpion, and all the wrong way drivers and the heat and all of that. Don't move here, you guys. Don't move here. But the nicest people when they're not behind the wheel of the car.
all right. Rolling on to letters from our listeners. We got nothing, big fat nothing this week. But I do want to send a big shout out and hug to all those of you affected by the fires in California and the firefighters and everyone in harm's way. Please listen to the evacuation warnings. Please get out. Fires travel very quickly and they are unpredictable. So you do not want to play Russian roulette with your lives. Get out when you can.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like every summer it's just like California is just on fire. So
yeah,
um,
true.
I don't know what I don't think there's ever been a forest fire in North Carolina, but I don't want to find out. Anyway, this week we are taking a total detour off of murder. Um, I have to say that there is some mayhem involved, but not the kind you think. I sat and dedicated some time to the documentary on Netflix called Tell Me You
Nope.
No. Tell Tell them you love me. I don't even know the name of it. And the reason is because I started getting a lot of newsfeed articles about this documentary. And so I want to break it down and I want to talk about it. And you can ask Cheryl, I just sent her like a 5-page document that I wrote. And I watched this thing like from start to finish, like a bunch of times. And you're going to be amazed. But at the end, I also did a deeper dive and went to YouTube and watched a bunch of commentary stuff and other things on it. So I actually feel like I did quite a bit of research on this. Um, so for those of you in listening, Bill, remember this is a documentary, so it's about real people's lives, and you get to go watch it and formulate your own ideas and opinions, etc. They do a very good job of presenting it just factually for what it is. But there is some really, really heavy subject material in this. So if you are associated with or a parent or the child of somebody who is an American with disabilities, and you find any of that or anything about sexual assault or rape triggering, you'll want to avoid this episode because we wouldn't want any of our listeners to be triggered. The documentary and Cheryl, just jump in anytime you have a comment or a question, because I know sometimes when Cheryl gets really quiet, it's because she's fallen asleep. All right. This documentary starts out with a woman named Anna, and she is talking about how she's released from prison. So you immediately understand she's committed a crime. She says that she leaves prison. She goes first to a hair salon to get her hair cut. And this is her first interaction in the outside world. And she says to the hairdresser, it's going to be super interesting. Like, just this being my first thing that I'm doing upon leaving prison, because I was in prison and I am not guilty. So you know right from the get-go that she doesn't consider herself guilty for what transpires.
Can I ask a question already? Is
Yeah.
it too soon to ask how long she was in there, or are you going to get to that later?
I'm going to get to that later.
Okay. All right.
So this documentary is not very long, first of all. So if you're worried about a time commitment, it is an easy watch. It is like maybe an hour and 50 minutes. And the way it's put together is it's very informational, but it's also touching and gripping and compelling and disturbing. So it has all these elements that keep you really like hooked into it. It begins in August of 2011 with the police department interviewing a woman named Daisy about her son, Derek Johnson. And she says he does not have the ability to make decisions for himself. He has a brother named John Johnson, who also participates in the documentary. And he talks about Derek coming home from the hospital when he was a young boy, what Derek was like as a baby and as a child. And then both John and Daisy talk about Derek's history, his medical history, his health history, his seizures, his treatment, and how he was diagnosed after a series of seizures with cerebral palsy. And in the words of Daisy, she was told that he would never be able to do as normal children would do. And this is also the first usage of the word retarded. And I'm just saying the word because it's used by the medical community and the sociology community to classify him. He has been classified, and maybe it's because of the timing, but I do know after talking to a social worker recently that the term mentally retarded is still used today on files to classify people with intellectual disabilities, which I didn't know that. I always assumed that we had started. I shouldn't have assumed, but I felt like we were classifying people with what their intellectual disability was, whether it was autism spectrum, Asperger's, Down syndrome, and the list goes on, because every single one has a different classification and description and comes with its own like list of symptoms. But I was really surprised that
I'm
they.
surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised too. So you wouldn't say mentally challenged or someone with mental health issues. What does mentally retarded actually mean?
Well, they used it as an intellectual disability. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about that like later on. But I will say that I prefer intellectual disability. But
Right. I was
again,
going to say, why don't they
intellectual
just say that?
disability, there's a huge spectrum, just like autism spectrum. So maybe they need to call it intellectual disability spectrum and then categorize people on that spectrum instead of using an antiquated term because it became a slur. And honestly, people with intellectual disabilities don't want to be slurred.
Right,
So
of course.
anyway, moving past that, they showed Daisy spoon feeding Derek. So you understand right away that not only does he have an intellectual disability, but he also has a physical disability, which limits his ability to care for himself. And they talk about him as a child being listless. And then all of a sudden, there was kind of an awakening once he got to a certain age when they would lock eyes with him and there would be recognition of who they were. He knew who they were. He recognized people's faces, but there is no reference, at least none that I saw, and I watched this over 2 times, of an education, formal education. And I don't mean him going to a school. There was reference later of a school um, where he learned to walk, but there's no reference of education, learning, training, anything like that. So I don't know, is he learning the alphabet? Is he just learning motor skills? What's happening at the school?
And how old is he when the documentary starts?
When the documentary is filmed, he's around 35.
Okay.
His brother refers to him as being a character. He loves music. He loves being active. He can walk. He's not bound to a wheelchair. Sometimes he can be self abusive. So, like, if he's really agitated, he'll hit himself in the head or hit his limbs against a surface. He loves wire hangers and he loves banging wire hangers on the ground. And it's a mystery um, be, as far as how much of a character he is because he's nonverbal. He makes noises, but he doesn't speak. And so I found his brother referring to him as being a character is interesting because there's this intellectual disability categorization, but yet his brother talks about him recognizing people and as him being a character, moving to music, etc. So to me, in order to be a character, you have to interact with people, which would indicate a and with the recognition of people, it indicates a higher intelligence,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So anyway,
Yeah.
the documentary then goes to introducing Anna Stubblefield, which is the woman who was released from prison that I mentioned. She doesn't want to rewrite things in her head. She says that she can see how easily that can happen. So she just tries to stick to the facts when she's being interviewed for this documentary. And I found that very interesting. And I
That is
wondered,
interesting.
yeah, if maybe she had gone through some extensive therapy as part of her um, release from prison, which I'll talk about later. And a therapist could easily say, we sometimes tell ourselves the things that we want to believe when things are
Mm-hmm.
not believable. So
Mm-hmm.
Anna Stubblefield, at the time that this all happened, was the director of the philosophy department at Rutgers University in the American Studies program. So she's at a prestigious university. John, Derek's brother, is one of her students, and he has a class with Anna as the professor. And Anna talks about working with people with disabilities and helping them with literacy and communication through education. And she talks about the notion of intelligence as a concept. So if someone can't speak, they are too stupid, there is nothing in their head, but that not being the case. Just because you lack speech, that doesn't mean you're stupid. You just might not have the ability or the agency to do so. So they show videos of other disabled people with autism or people who are nonverbal, who were originally considered severely intellectually impaired, who once they were able to communicate via computer, and it's called facilitated communication, and how they can wake the person up by using this keyboard and this
Wow.
computer.
So about how old is Anna?
Anna is roughly at this time, it appears to me that she's between the ages of 30 and 35, most likely.
Okay, so she's around Derek's age.
Right.
Okay,
And
okay.
Derek may be a little bit younger. I don't know for
No,
sure.
I was just picturing her. I was picturing her much older, but she's not.
No, she's not.
Okay. Okay.
She is older now, but at the time of filming, she's older, but not when this all went down.
Not much older than him. Not much older than Derek.
No, they're in the same like age basket.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a little bit later about facilitated communication, but it is a way to, like I said, to kind of wake up people that previously they thought there was no ability to communicate, and they were just locked inside themselves, basically. So,
like the diving bell and the butterfly. Did you see the diving bell?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
And that's based on a true story.
Beautiful. And
you guys
just like if you think about a really famous person, when Stephen Hawking was getting older and ALS had ravaged his body, he had a computer generated system that would actually talk for him, and he would use this computer to formulate like these super, because the guy was like a super genius. And it had that, very robotic voice like this. But it was so cool because if he didn't have that ability, he would have been trapped in his body with no ability to communicate. So anyway, John approaches Anna, because remember, she's his teacher, and tells her about his brother Derek and how the woman in the film that was shown in his house reminds him of his brother, and gives examples of how Derek would try to communicate. And he thinks his brother might also be a similar case like this woman. Like when Derek's hungry, he'll tap on the refrigerator to let them know he's hungry. So he is communicating. It's just he doesn't have words. So Anna suggests to John that she could do some assessments to see if Derek is a candidate for this assisted facilitated communication. So they accept her word. She's educated, she's intelligent, she knows what she's talking about, and they invite her into their lives and into their home. At this point in the documentary, they introduce a woman named Deva Kasnitz, who is an anthropologist, and she has a pretty severe speech impediment. It's called torsion dystonia, which creates involuntary, very jerky movements. She has times that she can't walk in her life, but the most disabling is her speech. But they use closed captioning so that you can see what she's saying. Now, if you're not reading the closed captioning, because they also play her words while she talks, you cannot understand what she's saying. You can understand maybe every fourth or fifth word. But I found her to be fascinating to watch and to listen to, because it gives you an idea of what it's like to go through life on a daily basis with a speech disability like this. Because I got to tell you, Cheryl, people probably disregard her on a regular basis because they instantly think this person is just making sounds.
Right.
But I didn't feel like she was necessary for the documentary, because while she can give commentary on what it's like to be an American with disabilities and to operate in the world with this disability, and to give examples of how using assisted communication has helped her, for example, she's not in any way associated with Derek, and his situation.
Right.
So I thought it was interesting that they included her though. She's she doesn't have cerebral palsy either, and she is not nonverbal. She's difficult to understand, but not nonverbal. If they had really wanted to do justice to this case, I feel like they would have found somebody who used assisted communication to communicate who is fully nonverbal, because they claim that there are quite a few people who there have been breakthroughs intellectually with these people because of this. Assisted communication is, and let me just go through a brief description. It's holding someone's hand under their upper arm. So people with cerebral palsy sometimes are unable to use their limbs, and so they have to be propped up, and they point at letters on a keyboard to spell out words or point to items they want to choose. And they give examples of how they've unlocked kids that struggle with communication. For example, she said she started with pictures because obviously when she started working with Derek, she didn't know how much he knew. What was his comprehension? Could he read? Could he identify letters, etc.? The thing that I find problematic about it is you're holding someone's hand and allowing them to point to letters. The keyboards that are being used are tiny. This is like, I'm surprised that they haven't developed keyboards with much larger letters for people with jerky motions or they don't control their limbs very well. Because really,
Right.
truly, the person who's guiding your hand has a certain amount of control as to where the hand is going.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point.
my
We
biggest
we
question,
get we get fat fingers just trying to like text on a damn
exactly.
phone.
One of my biggest questions at this point, though, Cheryl, is when did Derek learn how to read? Did he go to a school where they focused on any kind of like education? Did he learn the alphabet, uppercase and lowercase, in kindergarten, first grade, second grade? Was he getting any formal education? Did he use sign language when he was a child? I use sign language with the babies I work with all the time. And it's amazing the amount of communication that you can do with a child under in the age that they're not verbal for a child that will become verbal. And I'm talking about like asking for things, responding to things with affirmation or with negativity, um, being able to identify things that are happening to themselves, like they have poopy diapers, they're hungry, the food tastes delicious. Open the door, close the door, let's go upstairs. All kinds of, I want milk, all kinds of things. So all we know at this point is that Derek has cerebral palsy. He can walk with assistance, and his eyes track. But Anna talks about how little information they had on his level of intelligence, and that's the part that I found so crushing. And I would have liked for there to be a little more information. The brother
Mhm.
John talks about him learning to walk at school, but I don't really know anything beyond that. So Anna does assessments with him, and she starts off with large pictures. And from the pictures, they go to literacy, cards with letters, so she can see how much he knows to read. Can he spell? So while he can touch a card with a letter of picture, it's a different story to press a key on a keyboard, like I said, because it's small and it requires more work. So
Right.
she talks about how he makes mistakes at first, realizing that on a keyboard, there are uppercase letters, and maybe on a screen the letters are lowercase if you don't leave the cap locks on, and so things like that. He's having a harder time identifying lowercase letters, say, than uppercase, or he's confusing similar letters, like for example, an I and an L, if one's uppercase or lowercase because they look the same,
Right.
things like that.
Right. Hmm.
um, Daisy says that it was like the porch lights going on. And remember, Daisy is Derek's mother. she gets very excited about this process because Anna says he's a fast learner. And Daisy says, I'm his mama. Tell me what my sons can do, because she's really proud of her sons. Her other son, John, is working on his PhD. So obviously, there's intellectual capacity that's, above and beyond in this family. So I'm just also curious at this point, did they read to him? Did he listen to books on tape? Did he watch certain news shows on television? Did he have interest in children's shows, in adult shows? Like the babies I work with, they enjoy Elmo and they enjoy, little kid shows. If I play CNN for them, they're not going to enjoy that. So I'm wondering about Derek and like what are the things that he enjoys on television. If there's an intellectual disability, he's not even going to want to watch Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune. He's going to want to watch cartoons and children's shows, children's programming. So I have a lot of questions. Anna is now able to ask him more questions. She's able to have him answer, and Daisy trusts Anna, and she has let her into her home. So Daisy will step out of the room at times when Anna's there. And I'm so intrigued at this point. And they also don't talk about this on the documentary, but why is Anna still visiting him? She's a philosophy department head at Rutgers. She can have someone else come who's an intern, who's a PhD student, who's a postdoc, who is a TA, can come and sit with him and go through this facilitated communication. And how does she have time to see Derek? She's seeing him like 2 hours a week. That's a lot of time out of your busy day. I mean, remember, there's also travel to and from his home. She also explains that at this point she stops calling him Derek, and she asked him what did he want to be referred to, because now they're having communication back and forth, according to her. And he spells out DMAN, and she asked Daisy what that means, and Daisy said he had a teacher when he was younger who used to call him D-Man, because his name's Derek. So, yo, D-Man, like right. That's like a nickname, which I love right. Nicknames. I'm all about nicknames. My kids have had nicknames, multiple nicknames. And so do our dogs, and so does our cat. So she starts to call him by his nickname, but the thing that's so strange is she doesn't call him D-Man. She calls him D-Man. Like it's D-E-M-A-N. D-Man.
Like Chandra? Does she call him Chandra?
Yeah, but then I was like, well, maybe she's trying to affect a vernacular that's not, I don't know. It was just very strange. The mom said that he went by D-Man, so call him D-Man or call him Derek. Anyway, she's starting to get to know him at this point as a person. And she suggests to Derek's mother and brother that he could take some classes. And then they do say he didn't get a formal education of any sort. But of course, he knows how to identify letters, so he had to learn his alphabet at some time. So there's a literature class at Syracuse, like kind of like a, not an offshoot, but a satellite campus. And Derek wants to take it, so they sign him up for it. And they find a student, like I said, who can go with him and help him write his essays and help him with the Anna helps him with the facilitated communication, but the student helps him write his papers. And the student meets with him several hours a week. And the transcripts that they have are so interesting and thought-provoking. There's pages of transcript. There's a conflict that she explains that he went to class and he wrote something, and the way that she reads what he wrote, she puts it in her own words, and he gets angry with her, and he tells her that he wanted her to read it exactly the way that he wrote it, and she apologizes. She says she spoke for him, and that was wrong. And you can start to see how this kind of communication is problematic. The person in control of speaking for the disabled person has a lot of control and power. And that person could be a mentor, a teacher, a family member, but they wield all this power because the person's nonverbal and they're verbal, so they can shape whatever they say. But she said it was like that was their first fight. But Anna believes, and he tells her, "Don't ever do that again." He indicates to her with facilitate communication that he's angry. So she believes he's intelligent, Anna does, and has important things to say, and she likes these qualities in her friends. And her quote at this point is, "I'm the kind of nerdy intellectual girl who wants a nerdy intellectual guy."
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a question. Just what did you already say? Did you say what Daisy did? Derek's mother, Derek and John's mother, did
she
for.
is his full-time caregiver.
Okay, she doesn't work outside of that. She doesn't have a profession.
There is no indication that she works outside of the home. So, of course, it's probably liberating for Daisy, this process, because obviously her son is now like his world is expanding, and there's somebody locked away inside his body, and she probably is getting some free time too out of this. But anyway,
Right.
Anna indicates that she's unhappy in her marriage, and she was married to an African American man. She has 2 children. She really is enjoying spending time with Derek, and she's impressed by him, and she is choosing to spend her time with him. So in March of 2011, she invites him to talk to a class, and someone asks him what his hopes and dreams are, and he talks about becoming a writer, and then someone asks him about love or relationships, and he uses facilitate communication to say, "I would love to be married, but it seems unlikely for people with disabilities like mine." And Anna says at this moment, she thinks, "You can have that with me." And you literally feel like you're having the rug pulled out from underneath you.
Wow. Did you say that Derek is African American?
Yes, he is.
Okay. I don't know if you.
So she clearly has the type, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first thing I think about is I feel sad. The first thing I feel is I feel sadness. Her marriage is falling apart. She's been helping this young man. I feel like she's misplaced her affections. She is misguided, sure. And she probably needs professional help to separate her professional life from what's happening with Derek,
Right.
And the feelings she's having because her marriage is falling apart. She's also Derek's teacher, and to me, she's crossed an ethical line. But they tell each other that they love each other, and then she says he asks her to kiss him. And she does, and then he asks again. And then, they, yeah. I mean, obviously, this is the beginning of intimacies that they're having with each other, and they're spending time together. And it's not just about the facilitated communication. That's not the only thing they're doing when they're together. And John, the brother, says there starts to become tension, and he notices that Derek starts to change. He likes classical music. He likes red wine. He's a vegetarian. Again, remember, these are all things that Anna is saying about Derek. And John uses the terms high culture, low culture, and those were his words to reference a style of music. And I found that very telling. The documentary also shows at this point Daisy bathing Derek. So he is an adult man in an adult body, but she's caring for him much like she has his entire life, as if he were not an adult man in an adult body. And Anna talks about the difficulty of a caregiver having to pivot from caregiving to letting the disabled person decide for themselves. But remember, it's not just a caregiver, it's also his mother.
Right.
So Derek is starting to make requests about moving out, living in assisted living, making his own choices. And John talks about how it's starting to become personal at this point. And there's cost associated with this. They don't like Anna helping him assert his independence. And Anna says to Daisy, you need to cut the apron strings. And this is where cultural values and race start to really play out. Anna is a white woman, Derek is a black man, and this white savior situation starts to really rear its ugly head because she comes swooping in, I'm going to save your son. I've liberated his mind. Now I'm going to liberate his body. And it's very problematic. Anna, I will say this, Anna really lights up in the documentary when she talks about Derek and the time they're spending together. She talks about them hooking up and the obstacles they face in order to have physical intimacy. Remember, to date, he's not had intimacy with other partners. And she says she lets him call the shots. She says that he seduced her. And I have to tell you that, remember, she's in a position of power. She's his teacher, his facilitator, and she doesn't have his disability. So it's uncomfortable at the, across the board to listen to her describe how she disrobes him. And then he says to her he has dreamed of this. And she says she thinks that he's taking control of the relationship. But in reality, she's the one in control. She came across very needy at this point. She's inserting all these emotions and thoughts and feelings for him that she's feeling for him instead of him feeling for her because she's facilitating his communication.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
can I ask what was John and Daisy hoping she would do with Derek? Like, what was their
I think
goal?
They were hoping that she would open up his communication, he would go to school and get a degree and maybe be able to write or be able to give talks or be able to, lecture or something like that, because he did say he wanted to be a writer. And, but I can tell you that as a brother and a mother, there was no idea in their mind at all that there was anything more to this relationship between Anna and Derek than like teacher-student relationship. And remember, go ahead.
The only communication they had with him was him like pointing at the refrigerator if he was hungry, that type of thing. So they wanted
right, and he does make noises, so he can make repeated sounds like something like that. But again, they always just chalk that up to him being nonverbal, and those sounds don't necessarily have to mean anything.
Right.
Or maybe they do. I don't know, because I don't know anything about facilitated communication other than what I learned in this documentary. John and Daisy's reactions when Anna comes to talk to them is clearly very hostile. They ask her about her husband. She tells them she hasn't talked to him yet. Derek asks her to kiss him in front of them. She insists that she's uncomfortable with it, but he pushes her. And so she does it in front of Daisy and John, and they're shocked.
Oh my
and John God. Is so, I know, he's so angry and rage-filled that he stands up and he leaves the room. And so, she wraps things up with Daisy and then she leaves. And intermittently at this point, they start interviewing, they start putting in police interviews because they start to talk about how, like, the police start interviewing either Daisy or John about what facilitated communication is. Neither John or Daisy are able to get from Derek what Anna has been able to get, and they find a Frontline documentary about how problematic this facilitation can be. And the question asked here is, who's doing the speaking? Is it Anna or is it Derek? Because obviously, with a physical relationship, he has to be assisted in communication, and there has to be another person there to help him communicate, and that person is her. So now the lines of facilitated communication between these two people, this relationship that she claims they have, and sexual abuse and sexual assault, they're all blurry because in her mind, she's in a consenting adult relationship with a disabled man, and in everyone else's mind, she's a crazy person who's sexually assaulted and committed a crime, and Derek is not able to weigh in because he's nonverbal.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So obviously, as they're overturning rocks, you learn that sexual abuse in cases of disabled people who are nonverbal the cases are rampant. They show that facilitators don't necessarily believe they are creating for the disabled person, but they are pulling what they want out of the disabled person. And they feel like Anna has crossed all these lines and that they think that the facilitated communication is bogus. She emails the school that Derek goes to and asks the school if she can visit him there because Daisy won't respond to her, which again is a huge, huge error in judgment and a horrible decision on her behalf because she's sneaking around now behind the mom and the brother trying to gain access to Derek.
Yeah, she's crossing a whole other line.
Right. So John meets with the dean of Syracuse University, and the first thing that happens is Anna loses her job. The dean says, John, you need to lawyer up. And then they end up going to the police, obviously. Daisy calls Anna and asks her point blank, how many times she and Derek made love. And Anna says, and this is just, it's just like, she used her office. She used her job office. She said it had enough floor space. She brought in a floor mat and towels. So obviously she's got serious boundary issues. Her professionalism is completely out the window. Now you're questioning the issue of consent, her power that she wields over him. It's just, and of course the call is a setup. She thinks it's an innocent question that Daisy's opening up to her and warming to her. But of course the police have recorded it. And so now it's a crime that's being investigated, and they search her house. Her ex-husband is involved and knows she's under investigation. So if there's an acrimonious relationship there, he's now involved. They interview the assistant who helped Derek, the professor he took the literature class from. They bring in specialists to assess Derek, and it's all very damning for Anna because he's nonverbal and it weighs heavily against her. And it's determined that he does not have an intellectual ability above 6 to 12 months of age. And he is deficit in all areas of functioning. And he is diagnosed as severely mentally retarded. So again, that is the diagnosis he's given. I would have preferred they said severely mentally impaired. But regardless, I think we need to do better and change that word.
Which I thought we did. So that's what
I know. It's just that to me was problematic too. Anyway, the other problematic part of this documentary for me is at this point they literally stop seeming to care about Derek. If Derek has been expanding his horizons and communicating and taking classes and learning and developing, what goes on at this point? Now we're only looking at her as a criminal, and his mom's still taking care of him, 7 days a week and bathing him and feeding him. But it's what's happening with Derek? Is he still going to school? Is he, I just gobsmacked. Again, is he watching TV? I don't know. It just, anyway, Daisy says she feels like she's painted to be the villain. She says, that's my baby. And she talks emotionally about walking hospital corridors when she was suffering, not knowing what was wrong with her son when he was a child. And as a mother, I can tell you, Cheryl, it was super visceral to watch her reaction. She feels very strongly that this woman has taken advantage of not only her son and her baby, but also they've let her into their trust. Remember again, this is a Black family. There are problematic trust issues between, inviting a white person in and trusting them, letting them have, full run of their home. And so she's violated their trust in so many ways. Again, going back to Anna, she doesn't believe she's guilty of what she's charged with, which, remember, we've talked about before, that women in women's prison, nobody's guilty. She believes that he seduced her. And I was talking to someone who shall remain nameless, and you know what they said to me? They said she wasn't in love with Derek. She was in love with AI. She was in love with the computer. The computer fed her the things that she needed to fall in love. And it turns out it's fairly narcissistic because she was the person who was facilitating the interaction with the computer. So she fell in love with herself.
Yeah, I was going to say, so she was the only one that was able to glean any information from him. And I hear what you're saying. It's not really from him, it's from herself. But she was the only one that was that had any interaction with him through this communication.
No, because remember, he had an assistant who helped him write the papers for the literature class. So they didn't talk about that person. They probably requested that they not be shown on the documentary or not appear in it. But I wondered about their participation with Derek.
Well, so when his mom wanted to communicate with him, she wasn't able to use that same method.
The mother and John said that it proved fruitless, that they weren't able to use it at all. That he would point to all the wrong things. They would have large pictures. He wasn't able to answer any of their questions.
Was someone else, like a third party, able to corroborate whether he could or couldn't?
Remember, they brought in specialists, and he was deemed to have the intelligence of a 6 to 12-month-old baby. So they did bring in specialists. Now they're obviously in court. The court has determined that facilitated communication did not meet the standards of admissible evidence. The judge kept taking away all the evidence that Anna felt like supported her relationship with Derek, till she felt like it was just her word to back herself up. So they wouldn't allow any of the transcripts of the interaction between the two of them to be in the courtroom. And then the final straw was they brought Derek into the courtroom because he has to be assisted with walking with his mother, and he walked through the courtroom and then walked out. And Anna's mother, who's interviewed intermittently through the documentary, says it was horrifying the way they used him as a prop or evidence, and that the impact on the court must have been immense. Anna still didn't think she was going to be convicted at this point, but her mother said she felt like it was a done deal after Derek walked through the courtroom. But you know what? Her mother supported her to the very end. And I have to say, that had to be really hard for her mother. A mother's love is a very, very strong emotion. Anyway, Anna was sentenced to 12 years, first-degree sexual assault, count 1, and another 12 years for count 2. They didn't say what count 2 was. And then parole for life. So the years were concurrent. So she would have served 24 years, which is almost life in prison, and then parole for life. But she was in prison for 2 years, and she appealed her conviction, and a 3-judge panel decided in her favor. They ruled that her defense was limited by the court's dismissal of testimony related to facilitated communication, and she accepted a plea to a lesser charge and was released. And I'm sure that her accepting the plea was probably, she realized, I'm going to get out of prison. She had already served 2 years. So she ended up only serving 2 years, but she still maintains her innocence. She still maintains that the relationship was not a figment of her imagination, and that it was not sexual assault or first degree sexual assault or rape or anything like that. She is articulate, she's attractive, she does not come across as a predator in any sense. But the mother says the damage has been done. She says that Derek has had to be medicated because he masturbates now and has sexual urges, and that this was all because of Anna. And I have to say that I found that also very interesting because, again, remember the mother views him very much in this infantile way. I understand that the mom, but remember, she's also referred to him multiple times as her baby, and he is her baby. She cares for him in the exact manner that she would have when he was a baby, in that, except that she can't carry him because now he's heavier. But I definitely think it would be so difficult to transition for the mother from being a full-time caregiver to a child with a disability, to see them as anything other than your child, as a child.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here trying to put myself in his mom's place. Like, you've seen his physical body grow, but you've been there all along, since he was born, right. And he has not matured in his mind. And so I think it would be hard to see him in any other way than a baby, because even though his body is grown, he hasn't mentally grown. But I have a question about, so I told you, Joy, that I started watching it when it first came out, and I could not take Anna's her disposition. It bothered me because they give you a synopsis, so you kind of know what it's about, right? And so
right,
she just seemed really glib to me. Do you think that you're saying that she honestly felt that she didn't commit a crime, right?
She maintains her innocence to this day.
So she thinks that she's innocent because he was the one that initiated it. It was his own free will that wanted to have a sexual relationship with her, right?
Right.
That's how she feels. But as what was she, a counselor? A therapist? A psychologist?
Anna? She was the chairperson of she was the department head of the philosophy department at Rutgers University.
Philosophy department. That's so interesting. How did she, what does that have to do with? So is that why so she never said she felt like she crossed the line in the role that she was brought in to his life under?
She does not. She maintains that he seduced her, that he's intelligent, that he is loving, he's human. She said she fell in love with his soul.
Yeah, but aren't there two different things? To me, there are two different things. Like, okay, so she has the stance that he was an adult who could make his own decisions, but she was also in a professional role, right? So,
like, you're definitely an abuse of power. Definitely.
Okay, so my question is, does she admit to at least that?
No, she doesn't. She doesn't talk about, I mean, she's very candid about losing her job and how she got fired and she was given a letter and blah, 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 and escorted off the premises. But it's so interesting. It's like, I mean, maybe if there was more time, they would have gone into, like, I was hoping that she would say, I was going through a dark time in my life. My husband and I were splitting up. We were fighting over the kids. I mean, when they read the verdict in the courtroom, she just kept repeating, let me take care of my daughter. Let me take care of my daughter. And I thought it was so interesting because here's a mother and her son fighting because she has, they believe she has raped their son. And you're crying, let me take care of my daughter. What about this lady's son?
Okay, when you talked about the mother being in the courtroom, the first thing that popped up in my head is that I bet you there's something with the two of them, with their relationship.
Well, there was definitely a power struggle.
The fact that Anna doesn't see any line that she's crossed, but regardless of
Oh,
whether she
you
thought
mean
he
with
was,
mother, with Anna's
what's that?
mother. Oh, that. So you mean with Anna and Anna's mother?
Yes, Anna and her own mother. When you said
Yeah,
she,
I
right?
don't know. I don't.
Because I
She
just,
didn't pick up on anything other than the mother has the craziest bangs I've ever seen.
well, that says it all right there. Guilty
They're,
as
they're
charged.
like, they're like, she has like this very aggressive box, like I mean, bowl cut with these really high bangs, and I'm like, huh, I haven't seen one of those for a while.
Okay, this was my take. Okay, everybody. I watched like the first 5 minutes. Okay, the synopsis, it really intrigued me and I was going to watch it. And then the first 5 minutes, it's Anna and talking, and I felt like the way she was behaving on camera was so like out of it was so like
Glib.
well, yeah, I've said that she was glib, but it from what I knew of the story, I was like, this is the person. I
Yeah,
just
she
felt
was
like
very
her.
cavalier. It
Say
was
that
almost like she was very cavalier. It was almost like she
she was
didn't.
very glib and very cavalier. Now I understand it's because you're saying in her mind she's very, very convicted that was she didn't do anything wrong, and I get
Mhm.
that. But something about the way she came off bothered me so much. I couldn't watch it. And this is a documentary that caught my attention. I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. And then the first 5 minutes, I was like, this woman, don't come for me, anybody. She's cuckoo bird. That's how I felt in the first 5 minutes of watching her. I was like, oh, this woman
Well,
is a nutcase
let
because
me.
of the way, because she had no. Okay, it's hard. I don't know if I can articulate this well. I understand that she honestly felt like she didn't do anything wrong. She definitely, didn't do anything criminal. Here's the thing. She may not have done anything criminal, but she definitely did something wrong. And I feel like anyone that was uh, not a little bit cuckoo bird, anyone who was kind of like, you know, I'm not calling her insane, but not clinically, but anybody who was in their right mind would kind of have a little bit of remorse or just a little more compassion. The way she came off was like she's just out there. Now, am I wrong? Because I didn't watch the whole thing, and now I might want to go back and watch it. But for the rest of the hour and 30 minutes or 40 minutes, was she a little more like she came off as a cuckoo bird to me?
She did not come off as remorseful. No, she did not come off as
And I
contrite.
know,
She did not come off as apologetic or in any way sorry for what had transpired.
and don't you think that any person, even if you really thought that Derek had free will and he really like took the initiative and all that jazz, don't you think you would still feel something? I don't know if the right word is
Well,
remorse because she thought she
I
didn't do
don't
anything
know.
wrong. So remorse isn't right. But as a mother to a mother,
I
as
know.
you were in a professional role. I mean, in the first 5 minutes, I was like, I can't watch this because
Yeah.
she's gonna make me mad. I mean,
Well,
you know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I do have a little disclaimer here. The use of facilitated communication has been rejected by the American Psychological Association, the American Speech Language Hearing Association, and other prominent organizations. It is still practiced in some institutions and by people across the world who insist it is a vital means for some nonverbal people to communicate. So I know you had asked me earlier about, whether or not this was used by more people or like were there like actual professionals that like could assess Derek. But it turns out that the two major like a bunch of prominent organizations have rejected this practice. So No, it's not recognized because again, the person who is doing holding the arm has all the control. The community that builds computers, you know, and you, those of you out there who are like sending rockets into space and making cars that drive themselves, you all know that there's a huge need for computers that Americans with disabilities and other people around the planet with disabilities could be using to facilitate communication. So why not spend some of your hard-earned money and some of your genius, I don't know, whatever skills to build some of these things so that people who are nonverbal can actually have a shot at becoming verbal without an assisted, like without someone holding your arm so that they have control over what you're pointing to or what you're, spelling out. I feel like it exposes an industry where you have a bunch of people who have no ability to communicate because we haven't built anything for them, which just shows nobody's giving two hoots about disabled people.
So after you watched it, did you think that Derek, those thoughts came from him?
I did independent research as well. I went to YouTube. I listened to Axiom Amnesia, a channel hosted by two Black commentators, a man and a woman. They were adamantly against what Anna did to Derek. And I have to tell you, I watched this more than once. And each time I watched it, I had a different reaction.
That's interesting.
They felt like what Anna did to Derek was, this white savior mentality. I'm going to rescue him. I'm going to open up the world. I watched, then I headed to another channel hosted by Denise Brady, who is a therapist. She's also a person of color. She talks openly about the Black family opening themselves up to this white woman only to be taken advantage of, how problematic that is, how a lot of different groups of different ethnic groups in this country, because of their relationship with white people, they're very closed off and not trusting. After I watched her, then I watched a white guy on this channel called Reporting Life from My Sofa. He's a random white dude. He's marginally funny, but he was so gobsmacked about how Anna could be intimate with Derek that he couldn't even move past that. Well, because of his physical disability, because at one point, the mom talks about how Anna would have had to have laid him, or the brother talks about how he would have had to lay Derek down on a mat in her office with a blanket on it and remove his diaper in order for them to be intimate. There's a lot more involved to this than just like two people like rolling around in the backseat of a car. So then I called my neighbor, who's a social worker, and I asked her some questions. And she had very interesting insight into Derek and his care and his rights. And she said, if he's deemed unable to care for himself and has an intellectual disability, then he cannot give consent. So what she did to him was rape and sexual assault, and that is in fact against the law. So she broke the law.
Right.
Of course, there was the abuse of power, and there was like he wasn't able to give consent and all that. But the brass taxes, she broke the law. She should have gone to prison, and she should be willing to accept that she broke the law and went to prison for breaking the law. And that is, she preyed on someone who was incapable of giving consent because of the nature of his disability.
I know what word I was looking for. Unstable. She seemed unstable to me. Is that
she did not
fair or unfair a statement? You watched the whole thing.
At the end of the documentary, and I watched it more than once, she did not come across as unstable to me. She comes across as intelligent, articulate, well-educated, very, very, very like aware.
Watch the whole thing because
I have to tell you.
She was articulate in the first 5 minutes, but I got a vibe from her that she was not quite all there, all there, because I feel like she is, I feel like she used that facilitated communication that thing as, that was a ruse.
But
I don't
here's
think
the
that was.
thing, Cheryl, and also I think about this too. She'd committed no crimes prior. She'd never
Mhm.
preyed on anyone before. I
There's a
think what
third person.
happened was she was in a dark place in her life. She made a series of very, very, very misguided decisions
Oh,
because of what was
yeah,
happening. And I
but
think
she
that
never admits that. It's like you
convinced,
said, she
right,
never
she
says, I,
convinced herself
you,
that he was a participant when he wasn't.
do you know who she reminds me of?
Who?
One guess. Who does she remind you of? Mary Kay Letourneau. She told without watching it,
Oh,
just listening. Totally reminds me of Mary Kay Letourneau, who for her entire life insisted that she didn't do anything wrong when she started having a sexual relationship with her 12-year-old student. Then put in jail. She comes out. She's not supposed to have contact with him. She goes back to him. They have two kids.
right.
They get married. She never in her entire life said, what I did, I should not have done. I was his teacher. He was 12. She never
Interesting.
ever did. And didn't she seem a little cuckoo bird? She was a little cuckoo bird. And without watching this whole thing, watching the
Mm.
first 5 minutes, Anna came off to me like that. Like she was, doesn't
Interesting.
that sound like the same thing? Like it parallels Mary Kay Letourneau.
It has, I mean, obviously, they both had an abuse of power. They both had control. They both preyed on people of color. They both had this white savior mentality, and
See?
they acted on that. So I will say there's a lot of similarities. The only difference is Mary Kay Letourneau was also a child predator and a pedophile, and Anna was not because.
But
But of course,
that's where the argument,
if his
yes,
mind wasn't intact, and
that's
he
the
wasn't
whole
able to give consent,
that's
he
the
wasn't
whole
logically a child. But the fact of the matter is that I mean,
that's
obviously there's no consent there.
that's debate. That's up for debate because his mom, that's how she saw it's very hard because
He
his
was
mental
he was mental
capacity,
capacity was 6 months to 12 months.
right, and his body, so it's it's to me it is very the same. It's very similar to Mary Kay Letourneau because this guy
So,
had
so
a mind of a child, and she was in a position that her role in that she should not have crossed that line, and it bothers me that she's like Mary Kay Letourneau till the
yeah.
death, till the end.
Well,
She was like, I
I
never did anything wrong.
go to Netflix and watch this documentary. I think that it's one of those documentaries that is people will have different reactions to it. And then
I know.
email murder and everything else at gmail.com and let us know what you think. I really, really would like to know after the 24 hours of research that I put into this. I want to know what you all think. And if you don't watch it, just know that the laws are there to protect people, like people with disabilities, people who cannot advocate for themselves, people who cannot give consent. Okay. And in this day and age, after Me Too and Time's Up, I mean, come on, like what's
But
going
but
on?
but I have to say, I know we're going really long, but I have to bring back the fact that a 3-panel judge ruled in her favor after she was
Yeah.
convicted.
After 2 years.
This
She
is very dicey.
Well, she can't. She said she worked at a restaurant, but news got around, and so she had to quit. So she now works remotely from home, and she does online work. And I don't know if I'd be able to hire her. I got to be honest, just knowing what I know. And you and I sat through some interviews with some pretty dicey candidates, so
Mm.
you know exactly what I mean. If you turn that paper over and it had this listed, I'd be like, "Yikes! Let's get me out of here."
Well, and
You know,
yeah, and just also because she's just has not been able to humble herself. I don't know if that's the right word, and really take a look at what she did, and yeah.
yeah, very interesting. Well, I got to tell ya, whew, uh, what she did obviously is a crime. It is a crime. There's
Yeah.
no questions asked. No, it's not up for dispute. But you know what's an even bigger crime?
What's that, Joy?
That we are so out of time.
We are so out of time. Anna, that was a crime. And we are out of time. Thank you for listening, everyone. And don't complicate your day. All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch managed by Cheryl Callan. Podcast editing, advertising, and social media managed by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Boljezic. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Audible.com, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, or you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.